Good morning and welcome to the Planning and Placemaking Committee of the 16th of April 2025. I'm Councillor Ian Massey and I'm the convener of this committee. And I'll introduce the top table to you, and on my far left is Councillor Grant Stewart, my Vice Convener, Miss Audrey Brown, Democratic Support Officer, and Mr Colin Elliott, Solicitor. And on my right, Mr Christian Smith, Development Management and Building Standards Service Manager, and Mr Paul Williamson, Team Leader, Local Applications. And as this is a hybrid meeting, members joining virtually are reminded that if you leave the meeting during consideration of any application, you are unable to participate or vote on that item when you return to the meeting. This also means that if a member loses their internet connection during consideration of an item, they should not vote on that item. Please advise the clerk via the meeting chat that you are leaving the meeting, or if you have lost your connection and are therefore unable to vote on the item. And whilst we are operating as a hybrid meeting for proceedings today, can I remind councillors and officers to use the chat box to attract my attention, which all members should have access to. Q for question, C for comment. I will now ask the clerk to confirm any apologies and attendance of those in the chamber and online. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. Morning, members. We have apologies today from Councillor Dave Cuthbert, and we have 3 members who are joining us online today. If they could advise that they're present when I call their name. We have Councillor Ken Harvey.
I'm here.
Councillor Ian James.
Good morning, I'm here, Audrey.
And Bailey Mike Williamson.
Yeah, I'm here.
All other members are present in the chambers.
Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Do members have any member have a declaration of interest on any items of business today? No declarations of interest, thank you. Item 3, the minutes of the meeting of the Planning and Placemaking Committee of the 12th of March 2025. Can we agree the content of the minute? Thank you. Deputations. Can I ask committee if they agree to hear deputations on item 521, 522 and 523? And on behalf of the committee, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to the deputations and members of the public watching today. Your request to speak has been granted. You will be called to the lectern as we reach the relevant item on the agenda and be invited to make your deputation by the Vice Convener, followed by a period of time for questions from members. It is requested that the content of your deputation is kept relevant to the planning considerations in relation to the item of business being discussed. Please also ensure that when answering questions, your response remains relevant and direct to the questions asked. Item 5, applications for determination. First item is a major application, and it's a section 42 application to vary condition 1 in accordance with plans 10 water and 12 archaeology of permissions of 22.00746/FLM at land 60 metres north of Abernethy Cemetery, Newborough Road, Abernethy. And then to introduce the report is Mr Smith. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. Good morning, councillors and others here in the chambers, as well as those joining us remotely on this chilly morning. You may remember this development, a similar version of which was approved at this committee in September 2022. This application before us today seeks approval to amend that approved scheme. The changes are to remove a previously proposed green roof from the control and switch room buildings. And secondly, as additional information has been submitted and approved in relation to flood and water supply, the previously applied condition 10 is no longer required. And similarly, archaeological requirements of the previously applied condition 12 have also been submitted and approved, removing the need for a similar condition. To let everyone know, there is a minor drafting error in the wording of recommended condition 1 in the report, and its reference to paragraph 5 of that same report, both of which should read: the development hereby approved must be carried out in accordance with the drawings and documents set out in this decision notice, unless otherwise provided for by other conditions imposed by this decision notice. the reason remains the same. So our recommendation is as per the papers with that revised wording. I'll now take you through a short presentation to reset the scene and outline the physical change to the proposals. The first image here is an aerial view showing the application site highlighted in red and its general surroundings. Visible is the Abernethy substation to the west, the Jamesfield Farm Shop and Garden Centre beyond to the northwest, whilst to the northeast are polytunnels and an existing battery storage adjacent. The next image, here we see the site layout, which is not significantly different from that previously approved, with accesses off both A913 Newborough Road and the minor road to the west. Note the relative scale and location of the switch and control room buildings to the west and east sides, respectively, marked in grey. The third image, this shows the approved control room with the green roof. Then in the fourth image, we see the same building without the green roof, noting that the size, form and location of the openings are all the same. Image 5. Similarly, this image and the one to follow show the switch room as approved with the green roof, and the next image as proposed. Again, the only change is the roof. We now move to a series of photographs. First looks from the Jamesfield Farm Shop car park and looks southeast across the site as it rises to the road. Note the trees which run along the railway line beyond the A913 and then the rising ground beyond. The next photo is from the A913 looking back in the opposite direction to the last image. Here you see the Jamesfield Garden Centre building to the left, a wind turbine in the distance at the centre of shot, whilst the existing battery storage site is just visible to the right or east of the photograph. Next, this image looks from opposite the junction with the A913 and the minor road in a northeast direction. Here it's possible to note the drop in ground levels from the road, as well as existing signage and power lines. Next image, this is on or is off that junction, just along the minor road and looking into the Abernethy substation site. Note the scale of the pylons, fencing and other associated development related. We now move to some visualisations showing the existing and predicted after situations. This first image again looking over the undeveloped site from northwest to southeast. Then the next image showing the site developed. It's difficult to notice either the switch or control room as they are a similar height to the fence which encloses the battery storage facility. Then the next image on the A913 opposite the entrance to the cemetery showing the undeveloped situation, and then the next image the predicted developed situation. Next, this image is from further east on A913 looking back across the undeveloped site to the Jamesfield Garden Centre, and then the final image, this is the predicted completed development, although it should be appreciated that there is a fairly significant landscaping scheme proposed on all sides which will develop over time. You can see some of that within this predicted image, but that is in effect on day one prior to the maturation of that landscaping. That's the end of the presentation. We return to the site layout for reference. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Can I ask if the committee have any questions for officers? No questions? Okay then, can I ask for a motion? Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Convener. Yes, they're just a motion to approve the changes as in the paper.
Councillor James, do you wish to second?
Yeah, quite happy to second, convener. I don't think there's anything too dramatic in the changes, so happy to second Councillor Braun's motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask if there's any amendment? No amendment. Okay, thank you. Therefore, the planning permission is granted, subject to the amended wording. Thank you. I'll move on to item 521, which is the change of use from workshop class 6 to gym fitness studio class 11, the workshop Montrose Road or to Alderada, and to introduce the report as Mr. Williamson. Thank you.
Thank you, convener, and good morning, everyone. The first local application relates to a proposal to convert an existing building near the centre of Alderada in order to form a gym and fitness studio. The property in question lies to the northern end of Montrose Road, just off High Street, and was last used as a workshop for a construction firm, although originally would have been a church. This application has been referred to committee in light of the receipt of a total of 15 objections and 20 letters of support. As outlined in paragraph 24, the concerns in the representations largely surrounded parking and traffic, noise, and alleged inappropriate land use. In considering the application, additional information was sought in respect of a noise impact assessment. The subsequent response from Environmental Health outlined no objection to the proposal, subject to a number of conditions relating to hours of operation, noise, mitigation measures for sound, a noise management plan, and a prevention on the use of the mezzanine level for gym activities. As outlined in the body of the report, the principle of the proposal is considered to comply with the development plan due to its edge of centre location and compatibility with neighbouring land uses, subject to appropriate control. Through the use of conditions, it is considered that the proposal shall help the existing business expand to a wider range of users, whilst also respecting the surrounding land uses around the application site. I'll now take members through a short presentation to detail the proposals further. Next slide, please. First, we have an aerial image showing the location of the site at the northern end of Montrose Road, close to the centre of Alderada. Next slide, please. We now see a location plan which shows the size of the workshop building and how it relates to the commercial centre and wider residential areas adjacent. Next slide, please. The next image is the proposed site plan, which shows the property in red and its relationship to the aforementioned properties, many of which are admittedly residential in nature. Next slide, please. Here we can see the floor plans, which show the ground floor plan on the left, an expansive floor plate, and the upper floor plan accommodation on the mezzanine on the right-hand side. Next slide, please. Next, we see the proposed floor plan, which shows fixed resistance machines in the pink area, cardio machines in yellow, free weights in dark green at the bottom, and an abdominal area and mat-based workouts area in orange. Ancillary accommodations such as locker rooms and toilets are in light green and blue. I will now show members a series of photographs for context. This shows the front elevation of the workshop building, which is recognisable by its large roller shutter door. The pedestrian access doorway is located on the right-hand side. Next slide, please. These next two images show the view from near High Street looking southwards on Montrose Road with the site on the left, while on the right is the view northwards with the building on the right. On-street parking is available on parts of Montrose Road and other public parking is available off and on High Street. Next slide, please. Next, we see a further view to the south of Montrose Road looking south, which shows the residential nature of that section of the street and also the availability at that time of on-street parking. Next slide, please. These final images were submitted by the applicant and show the exterior and internal arrangements of the property at present. Next slide, please. Thank you, convener. That now concludes my presentation and I will leave members with the site plan for reference.
Thank you, Mr. Williamson. We do have deputations on this item, so I'll now hand over to the Vice Convener for the deputations procedures. Thank you.
Thank you, convener. We have one deputation, however, we're expecting the person to be via telephone, and there doesn't appear to be any calls made into the committee. So I will hand back to yourself.
Apologies, that took me by surprise there. Okay, thank you. Can I ask committee if they have any questions for officers? Bailey Williamson.
Yes, thank you, Convener. I have two questions. The first question is about looking at some of the photographs that Paul put up there. They appear to be not much in the way of ventilation for a gymnasium. I can't see anything in the design which has incorporated additional ventilation for a gym. Is that correct, or does it need additional ventilation?
Certainly from the perspective of development management and planning, that's not a level of detail that we would ultimately assess, but it may well come through the parallel building standards and warrant process.
Okay, thank you. So I take it there's no extractor fans or anything like that that's attached to the building. My second question is about
just a second.
Sorry,
Lynn, you want to answer that question?
Yeah, this was mentioned in the noise impact assessment, that if all the works that had to be carried out with regards to the insulation and keeping the doors closed, then they would need additional ventilation. And I have put an additional condition on with regards to noise rating curves for plant noise to cover that.
okay, thank you. I see we've got someone waiting in the lobby. Is that the? Do you want to let them in before I go further?
Councillor Harvey.
I've got an additional question, Ian.
Yes, I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
You want to I think that might be the person coming. Do you want me to let them speak first, or should I ask my question, Ian? Sorry, convener.
Okay, we're just proceeding as we are. The deputation wasn't there in time. We're now moved on to officers for questions, so I cannot see how we can go back and hear the deputation from I can't remember the name, Miss Conley. So we will continue with the way we are. Councillor Harvey.
Okay, thank you, convener. Yeah, the question I had was related to parking. I noticed the comments in section 58 regarding parking. It's quite a relatively busy town centre. I'm just wondering if officers could just give a wee bit of a background explanation why the parking is acceptable for this development. Thank you.
I'll pass it over to Lachlan to provide a response in this instance.
Thank you. In terms of the development, I think it's important to note that the current business is operating above the Davidson's pharmacy, which is less than 100 metres away from the proposed location. So our kind of thinking regarding that was that the existing members going to the gym will already be travelling to the site using, whether that's driving, walking, cycling, whatever method they are using. And due to its close proximity, we would probably envisage that people will park in the locations that they've already been parking, or maybe move slightly. Maybe that might be that there's more people parking on Montrose Road, but we don't really see it being a huge impact. When you also look at the number of members who are going to be on site at any one time, it was advised that there would be 15 members on site at any one time. And when we got further information which says the existing system showed that there was roughly between about 10 and 25 members per day. So I don't think it's going to be a heavy number of people that are using the site, and even if there were, that, as Paul had mentioned in the introduction, there is on-street parking available in terms of you've got the Community School of Auchterarder, which is just about opposite Montrose Road. That's available out with school hours and school days, and then we've also got the car park further up the road as well. So we don't envisage it being a major concern. Plus we've also got the local bus service that goes round about as well, and we've got other bus services there as well. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Lachlan.
Councillor Allen.
Thank you, convener. It was just really to ask the officers if they can share how they've addressed. There's three comments there. One is impact on the environment through drainage, one's the presence of bats, and one's the inappropriate land use. Can you just maybe address those for me quickly? Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Allen. Obviously, I'll address each in turn. In respect of drainage, obviously there are existing drainage connections, within the building itself. It's seeking to utilise those going forward. There's no additional changes to the building form and structure, so that's deemed to be acceptable to move forward from that perspective. In relation to bats, there are no physical alterations to the likes of the roof, generally where bats, etc. would be present, or other physical alterations other than those that are going to be required to implement the sound mitigation measures that have been identified as being necessary. And the last one was at the compatibility of land use in general. Obviously, this is an edge of centre location, within which there is a wide variety of uses nearby in Auchterarder. The property in question had most recently been used by a construction firm as its workshop, which itself could have generated quite a lot of noise nuisance. It might not have done in the past, but it could potentially have. We're obviously drawing a comparison with what's going in, whether or not the activities within the building can be mitigated against. In respect of sound, obviously the use of heavy weights, etc. could generate noise, hence the requirement for us to get a noise impact assessment and have that assessed by our colleagues in environmental health. Obviously through that, as I say, there's the mitigation measures that can be implemented, and also the restriction on the usage of the mezzanine level, where I believe there's a steel beam that crosses through the building, obviously directly abutting with residential property. So it wasn't deemed appropriate for activities to take place at that level. Could be used for other purposes such as storage, that's fine. But more widely, that type of use in an edge of centre location can be deemed to fit in with the locale without detriment to amenity.
Thank you. Go back to Bailey Williamson.
Thank you, convener. My question is about the noise impact assessment and the measures that are being taken to mitigate against the additional noise. And it looks like they're proposing to use the minimum standard. And I was wondering if officers could possibly explain why that's minimum standard rather than above minimum standard, because of the additional noise that might be created through weightlifting, etc.
Thanks, Bailey Williamson. If I could ask that Lynn picks up on that, please.
Yeah, can I ask what minimum standard are you referring to?
I've noticed in the noise management impact assessment a number of times it's mentioned that it's going for the minimum noise mitigation rather than something above that. Have I picked that up wrong?
That's the minimum to meet the building regulations.
Right. Okay.
And sound insulation, and then so they looked at that and what had to be required to bring the building up to building regulation standards for sound insulation, and then they've assessed also for the actual use of the building, i.e. as a gym and the dropping of weights. So they did additional noise assessment for that, and then they've put in the specific mitigation requirements needed for that part. They've also looked at all the other parts of the building where noise can escape from, i.e. the windows, the doors, and they've put recommendations in for that for mitigation. So these are all put in my conditions, and also They also looked at if they were using any part of the building for classes such as aerobic classes or things like that, where they would have the mic and the instructor and louder amplified music, then there was also further mitigations to take that into consideration. So they've all been covered within the conditions that are set.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. I kind of found it a bit scientific in its assessments, so it was easy to get lost, I'm afraid. Okay.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that. Councillor Braun.
Yep, thanks, convener. Mr. Williamson, in paragraph 56, we talk about privacy and overlooking. In the last sentence, we talk about a condition imposed to install translucent glazing on the windows to improve privacy. But in condition 10, we talk about a translucent film in perpetuity. Those sort of films won't last forever, especially if it's condensation, whatever. Shouldn't we be stressing for proper translucent glass to go in?
Thank you for that, Councillor Braun. Obviously, the application of a film to a window, yes, depending on the quality of the film applied, could fail over time. If it were to be brought to our attention that that was indeed the case, we could then follow up through condition 10 to have that replaced, because it is to be retained in perpetuity to an appropriate standard. So as much as, yes, the ideal situation would be to replace the glazing entirely, film would be appropriate in this instance.
Sorry, Convener, can I just come back?
Yes, of course you can.
Given that Mr. Williamson, and obviously the confusion it could cause if it falls off and we've got to do enforcement, would it not be better to actually say now to have the proper glazing put in?
I think it's perfectly reasonable to have the film used. The what if it happens, we can deal with that through enforcement. It's far more sustainable to retain the existing glazing and just simply put a film on that will take a couple of minutes to do, rather than taking out all the glass, redoing all the window, etc., for exactly the same outcome. There are measures in place which could control the what if the film in whatever undeterminate a period of time fails, which may not happen, but we can deal with that. And as Paul said, if someone brings that to our attention, that I'm sure that the developer will be more than happy to replace the film.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay. Earlier on, I was working on the procedures of the committee, but I've had a look at the standing orders. Now, under standing order section 7, role of the convener, 7.2, as the convener, I'm allowed to, with the advice from legal, to decide all matters of procedure, and their ruling and my ruling shall be final. So basically, I am allowing, if we have Miss Connell on the line, I will allow her to make her deputation. For those online, it will just be a couple of minutes. Thank you.
Good morning, Ms Connell.
Oh, hello, good morning. Thank you for taking my call.
Okay, thank you for your patience. You're wishing to make a deputation on the application for the front of us about change of use to a gym. You'll be aware that you have 5 minutes for your deputation. Whenever you're ready to start, I will start the clock and I'll give you a prompt after about 4 minutes. So whenever you're ready,
Okay.
please start.
That's lovely. Thank you. So my name's April Connell. We live in Croftlands, which is the property, the residential property immediately next door to the workshop in Montrose Road. We received a copy of the report and we've just got a couple of items that we would like to highlight. First all was number 34, where it states that the workshop is situated within a predominantly residential street. It is in fact 100% residential with the exception of the workshop. It's a street of long-standing residents. We have no other businesses in the street. And previously, when it was occupied by Firmus Building, it was purely used as a store and there was no customers attending the premises. We think the change of use is really incompatible with the surrounding properties in the residential street. And we really object to the move from the centre of Auchterarder into Montrose Road. Point 35, where it says it's the business that's looking to move is a small semi-private membership gym with a capped membership. We're concerned that the business is a niche business, it's got a limited membership number, and it's not really for the benefit of the whole community. And we would question whether the change of use is in the long-term public interest of the community of Auchterarder, and it sets a precedent for future changes within residential areas of the town. We would welcome the building being used for a more sustainable, appropriate business, which would benefit the whole community in the long term under the current building use classification and not change the use. Moving on, item 58, parking. The gym members currently use the on-street parking arrangements around the gym. It's an incredibly busy road that we live on in Montrose Road with, and our concern really is about safety, and the demand for parking on the high street is already in excess of what's capacity. We have parking for employees and customers of existing high street businesses, spill over into Montrose Road as far down as Lundy's Walk. The majority of the properties in Montrose Road closest to the high street do not have off-street parking, and therefore that puts more pressure on it. We also have quite regularly dangerous obstructions of those who do have driveways, making entering and exiting onto Montrose Road very difficult and dangerous due to restricted view of oncoming traffic. And while we acknowledge that some members of the gym, they may walk and run to attend the gym, life is busy, and with poor weather and increased membership numbers, we feel that the parking situation will only become more of a problem. Moving on, under the conditions and reasons for recommendation, the hours of operation for the business. At the weekends, we feel that opening at 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning is not conducive to the residential street, and we would ask that that be reconsidered, perhaps a slightly later opening time of 9 o'clock. Again, under the conditions and reasons for recommendation, item 10, prior to use or occupation of the development, all ground floor windows on the elevation of the building shall be installed with translucent film. We would ask that all of the windows, because particularly those on the upper level, overlook our garden and into our property, actually into the windows of our upstairs of our property. So we would really ask that this be a condition as well.
That's 1 minute left.
Okay. The final issue that we have is my husband has previously been in touch with planning with regards to the existence of bats in the building. He believes that a survey should take place because the change of use is not a similar use, and the level of disturbance that may be caused because it's an older historic building, that should please be relooked at, and it should be surveyed prior to any work commencing. I think I would just like to close and just say, as a street, we strongly oppose the proposed change of use of that particular building, and we would really urge you to refuse the application. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Connell. Are you willing to take questions from members?
Yes, of course.
Okay, if you give us a moment while the chat function is populated.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Thanks, Ms Connell, for your deputation. I'm glad we got to hear from you. I am aware of the street. I visited it last week to have a look at this location. This is not a leading question, but is there any? This obviously will could become another type of business. Is there any business that this could come in here that would be acceptable, whereas the gym isn't in this instance at all? Thanks.
Yeah. I think a similar business to what we're against is the change of use. What we're absolutely for is our neighbourhood in the town of Auchterarder to remain a thriving community. We've lived in this property for 17 years, and we've had previous businesses occupy the workshop with minimal issue. There have been some when it was a garage and there was lots of cars parked outside, there was issues, but generally it has not been an issue up until now, and it's really the change of use that we're concerned about, bringing customers into a residential street where there is already really big pressures on the parking. With it being the Easter holiday last week, if you visited the street, there probably wasn't the same pressures on parking. Certainly during school term, my neighbours report, because they work from home, that regularly
Ms Connell,
yes.
Councillor Harvey asked particularly about the business use of the building, not about parking.
Sorry, that's
okay.
fine. So yeah, the reason I would say it's the change of use is what we object to. It's not the particular gym. It's about the change of use and what that change of use would mean to visitors to that business, I guess, is what I'm trying to get to.
No, that's that. You've answered my question, Ms Connell. Thanks very much for your
input.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Councillor Allen.
Ms Connell, good morning and thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
Yep, I've listened to your deputation, and we addressed some of those things in the previous questions and answers with the officers. One of the things I did take from your deputation was that you did suggest that you would be acceptable if there was a later opening time on a Sunday morning, and that there should be translucent film above, which
yes.
tells me essentially that you're not altogether too unhappy with this, although there is a residential concern within the area and the parking issues. So it's not a please don't do this, it's can you do it and help us out at the same time? Is that right?
No, it's not. We were saying please do not do this, but we accept that it's been recommended to approve the proposal. So we feel if that is the case, then we would ask that you consider our privacy in our property, because there are several windows in the upper level of the workshop that directly overlook our garden and directly look into our property to our upper floor windows. So, but our objection is that we would rather it not be changed use at all. But we appreciate that it's been recommended to accept it and to approve it, and if that is the case, there are a number of conditions that we would want to see to be considered to protect our privacy. Excuse me, to protect the privacy, because we just feel that it's, we have to live here, it's our home, and our neighbours feel the same way. And I think that the thought of being at home on a weekend and on a Sunday in particular, in the summer, if our windows are open and we're feeding gym users that early in the morning, it's not conducive to a happy life. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Thank you, Ms Connell. There's no further questions, so you're free to go. Thank you for your
Thank you very
deputation.
much. Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Convener, there's no further deputations, so I'll hand back to yourself.
Thank you. Now, we've already done questions for officers, but I've noted 3 points there that the deputation picked on. I would like to ask Paul about these 3 points, about the change of hours. Is that a condition that could be put in? The windows overlooking the property and the bat survey. If any of the committee have any other further questions for officers, just put them in, please. So Paul, that's the 3 things I've picked up on.
Sure, certainly from the position in respect to the later opening, obviously this has been through liaison with our colleagues in environmental health in terms of activities which could have a potential impact of noise. Obviously we've set the time at 8 o'clock within that condition. That's a kind of standard approach that we would take in such circumstances. We consider that's reasonable. The question would be whether or not any alteration to that would meet the 6 tests in respect of planning conditions in terms of their reasonableness and appropriateness, together with the actual need for it. Obviously, it's a preference of the neighbour. In respect of the windows, if members were so minded as to expand it to film to be applied to all upper floor windows, then yes, that condition could be amended on that purpose. Obviously, if it is just film that's being applied, the implications financially on the applicant would be less. Obviously, there's some of the windows though on the upper floors that wouldn't have an overlooking impact, particularly to the west side of Montrose Road, which does have trees, etc. as well. And then lastly, in respect of the bat situation, I believe I've already covered that, but obviously within the report itself, it cross-references that the activity and similarity in terms of use and noise would be similar, and with no physical alterations to the building itself. We do not deem that it's necessary to have any further surveys undertaken, and the biodiversity officer is satisfied. And we've attached an informative, should bats be discovered during the process, they have to follow due process.
Okay, thank you. Councillor James, I see you've got a question.
Thanks, Convener. And it goes back to something that the deputation actually brought up, which was basically the use of the building. I mean, it's currently used as a workshop. So I suppose it's an in theory question. If we were to not allow this application today and it was retained as a workshop, is there anything that would prevent another builder from going in and actually using machinery which should actually create more noise than they're wanting to hear? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor James. Yeah, I think you're quite right in identifying that, you know, an alternative occupier for the premise could go into that building tomorrow and could be far more intensive in respect of the usage that they have, which could have, you know, additional impacts on neighbours, whether it be by noise, whether it be by traffic, etc. So I think there's been fortune in terms of how it's been used previously, but you know, it could be used more intensively than it has been in the past.
Thank you. I see no further questions. Can I go back to the? I believe that the 5 tests are appropriate when you're talking about the opening times. But I also believe that it's not unreasonable to ask them to open at 9 o'clock on a Sunday rather than 8 o'clock. Can I go back over that again and get your opinion on that request?
Yeah, I think what the issue here is, would there automatically be an issue in terms of noise and disturbance between the hours of 8 AM and 9 AM, whereas at 9 AM something would change that said that there would be more noise acceptable after that period of time. I think, you know, the noise assessment sets out the mitigations and things in place. In the view of officers, whether that be environmental health, although I'm speaking for Lynn, she can perhaps come in, and ourselves, is that there is no significant difference between opening at 9 or opening at 8 in terms of the impacts that there would be. I think it would be up to the operator as to whether they chose to open at 9 in order to consider the wishes of their neighbour, rather than us be able to control that through a condition which may be seen as not serving a purpose that can be measured.
Is there any way we can actually contact the operator to find out if they are? I know.
Yeah, I believe they're present in the room.
I actually knew that, but I know you have. I don't know. Sorry, I apologise, but I don't know your names. Would this be something? And it's probably you've not made a deputation, but is this something that you'd be willing to do? Right. Okay. Right. Okay. Right. Lynn, you want to answer that question?
Yeah, I was just going to highlight the point that the noise impact assessment was undertaken and took into consideration the operational hours that were put forward. So that was a 6:30 start for the weekdays and the 8 o'clock start on the Sundays. And we feel that the noise implications there would be no difference between the 8 and 9 start.
Okay, thank you for that, Lynn. Okay, I see no further questions. Can I ask for a motion? Councillor Braun.
Thanks, convener. Yes, I'm going to put a motion forward to accept the paper as it is. However, I would like to include in that an amendment that the translucent window film is put on the upper floors as well. As Mr. Williamson said, that's not going to encroach an extra cost on the operator of that much. But I do feel that the request for a 9 o'clock opening on a Sunday is a reasonable one. It is a Sunday, after all. I appreciate what Mr. Smith has said about the differences in the hours, but it's a Sunday. The operators have indicated a willingness to do it, and I think for the benefit of all around, a 1 hour later opening on a Sunday, it is Sunday, a day of rest after all, would not be unreasonable to ask that. So my motion is to approve the paper as is, subject to translucent windows, translucent film on all windows facing properties, and that there is a 9 o'clock opening on a Sunday. Thank you.
Councillor Waters, you wish to second?
Thank you, convener. Absolutely happy to second that with Councillor Braun's amendments to the officers. What the officers have recommended in the papers. I think it's just common sense. I think the issues over the parking, I can't see a major issue over the parking, given that it is really just around the corner, and probably, hopefully people in a gym do tend to want to walk or cycle to the gym, but in the situations where they can't, I think they'll just be doing that anyway and be parking in roughly the same places. So happy to second.
Thank you. Can I ask if there's an amendment? No amendment. Do any committee have any comments on the report? Councillor Allen.
Thank you, convener. I'd like to thank the objector for coming on and placing her concerns. I think that the officers addressed many of those. One of the unanswered concerns today was the fact that there's an overuse of gym facilities in Auchterarder. This isn't actually an extra one. This is one that's just closing and moving round the corner, so there's no change there. Auchterarder does suffer from parking issues. We are, as local councillors, trying to address that There are other facilities available, such as was mentioned earlier on. The Community School of Auchterarder is available out with school hours. I just wish the local residents that this is not going to be an inconvenience for them. People who attend a gym are generally responsible people, and I wish the owners well. Thank you.
Thank you. No further comment. Okay, right. I'm just going to quickly hand over to Mr. Elliott just to confirm what is being asked.
Thank you, thank you, Convener. Just to be clear on the motion, that it is accepting the paper and all the recommended conditions with 2 changes, and I'm looking at recommended condition 3. So there will be a change in that, so that it will remain 0800 to 1800 on Saturday, but it will change to 900 to 1800 on a Sunday. The other aspect in looking at recommended condition 10, which is to do with the translucent film, I just wanted to clarify on that, because I heard officers say that not all elevations on the upper floors will need to translucent film. So my clarification from those that for the motion, are you looking for translucent film all around on the upper floor, or only on those elevations that affect residential properties?
That's correct. I think it does say in the actual motion on the southeast elevation, so I'm assuming the upper floor of that as well.
Officers can come up with an appropriate wording, but it's the relevant elevations affecting neighbouring residents. Yes,
thank you.
Yeah, I think we would need to look at it quite carefully, because I think there are a number of windows that are on double height spaces that, you know, it would be highly unlikely that anyone would be able to look out of them no matter what they were doing. And others that face in different directions. There is a mezzanine there, but it's only to be used as storage. So any translucent film going on any windows would relate to an area that's only approved for storage use, not any activity associated to the working out within the gym.
Okay, any further comment? No. Okay then, so planning permission is therefore granted, subject to the amended conditions. Thank you. We will now take a 5-minute break. Thank you. Oh, is everyone online? Okay, everyone, we'll move on. Moving on to 522. Which is the siting of a container unit for use as a hot food takeaway, formation of decking and outdoor seating, the Craft Diner, Athol Street, Dunkeld, and to introduce a report is Mr. Williamson.
Thank you again, Convener. The next application on the agenda today relates to a proposal related to an application which was previously considered by this committee in 2023 and to which a temporary 5-year permission was granted and the permission implemented and operational at present. In that instance, the hot food takeaway was approved in a converted container a short distance to the northwest of the proposed site in the wooded area adjacent to Stanley Hill near the centre of Dunkeld and the North Car Park. As outlined within the committee report, the proposal is now to erect a larger premise for the applicant in light of the success of his enterprise. This would be some 31 square metres in comparison to the existing facility, which is just under 8 square metres. The new facility will, like its predecessor, include an area of decking to accommodate a small number of tables and chairs, although the majority of custom is expected to be takeaway. The application has been referred to committee in light of the receipt of a total of 12 objections and 66 letters of support. A representation was also received from the Dunkeld and Burnham Community Council, who were operational at the time. As outlined in paragraph 28, the concerns in the representations largely surrounded visual impacts on the area and the wider conservation area, alleged breaches of planning control, and impacts on trees and road safety concerns, among others. As outlined in the report, the principle of this type of development has already been accepted in this woodland location, albeit on a temporary basis. However, given the increase in scale, it has been duly considered as to the associated impacts that could arise. From a visual perspective, the site is relatively well contained, with only immediate views available from the North Street car park or the immediate environs of the woodland and path network around about. The siting of the container and decking within the woodland can be undertaken without undue detriment to the surrounding trees, subject to the provision of additional information through condition. Similarly, with the location being discrete, the associated impact on the conservation area is considered to be neutral, particularly with final details of articulation and coloration to be agreed. With no technical objections from consultees, it is considered that a further grant of temporary permission is justifiable in this instance. While the preference would be to utilise a permanent premise in town, a temporary permission allows the business to grow further and to allow for further monitoring and reassessment in the future. The recommendation is therefore one of approval, subject to the 13 conditions listed within the report, and I will now take members through a short presentation to deal with the proposals further. Next slide, please. First, we have an aerial image showing the location of the site at the northern end of Dunkeld, with access taken through the North Car Park. Next slide, please. We now see a location plan which shows the site in greater detail, with its location west of the car park and to an extent behind the existing public conveniences, whilst also north of Stanley Hill. Next slide, please. The next image is the proposed site plan, which shows the footprint of the containers in pink and wider decking in grey. The existing facility is shown in a bright green outline. I'll now show members a series of photographs taken by myself at the end of January for context. Next slide, please. On the left, we see the view from the car park and beside the public conveniences looking westwards towards the takeaway. On the right is the view southwards from the car park, looking towards Stanley Hill and the path linking round to the cathedral. The new container would be between the trees where the couple are walking towards. Next slide, please. These next two images show the view from the rear of the container looking westwards back towards the car park, while on the right is the view from the south looking northwards. The replacement container would be to the right of the existing container just beyond the trees in the foreground. Next slide, please. These final images are two views from Stanley Hill looking down into the wooded area. Notably, it's when the trees are not in leaf. It does, however, give an indication as to how the use of a recessive colour can help integrate a building into the landscape and woodland. Next slide, please. Thank you, convener. That now concludes my presentation, and I'll leave members with the site plan for reference.
Thank you, Mr. Williamson. We do have deputations on this item, and so I'll now hand over to the deputy convener for the deputations procedure. Thank you.
Thank you, convener. We have three deputations. The first one is Ms. Claydon, who is an objector to the application. Ms. Claydon, if you'd like to come up. I'm aware that you've had to alter your deputation a bit, so best of luck. You'll be aware that you've got 5 minutes. Whenever you're ready, I'll start the clock and I'll give you a wee prompt after 4 minutes.
Good morning. I'm here today to object to this planning application and to make a statement on behalf of myself and a number of other objectors and local residents, all of whom have the gravest concerns about the way in which this process has been conducted. We are aware that the root of the problem with this application is the decision by the National Trust for Scotland to permit development on what is supposed to be a protected landscape held in their trust. Additionally, the most recent LDP2 is fundamentally flawed in that it does not identify the area in question as open space, despite the literature used for forming the LDP2 classing it as such. This has left the land vulnerable to development, classed for the purposes of this application by the planning officer as having no specific use, with policy 17 residential areas being considered applicable, thereby enabling development to go ahead. The fact that this continues to go unaddressed is both disappointing and concerning. We have a number of issues with the report of handling submitted by Planning Officer Andrew Baxter. Serious concerns were raised from objectors and the Community Council regarding the blatant breaches of planning control from the previous application. Despite the Planning Officer stating within the report of handling that these breaches would be addressed in the appraisal, none of them were. The breaches included conditions 2, 3, 6, 9 and 10. This lack of compliance by Mr. Sevick undermines the confidence that any future permissions will be respected or followed. One of the principal planning issues raised within 10 of the 12 objections was the ongoing long-term mismanagement of waste and the associated rat infestation, which continues to this day. Photographs were supplied by one objector household and by the Community Council. We are astounded that the planning officer has decided to dismiss these concerns held by people living in close proximity to the container, and we are at a loss as to why he would request that the planning committee do not take these conditions as being the norm on site. It is clear that the planning officer has not taken our concerns seriously, and disturbing to think that any planning officer would consider it appropriate to be so dismissive of a concern raised by a majority of objectors, especially a concern with potentially serious implications for public health. The planning officer also fails to mention the concerns raised in a number of objections regarding the impact of this poor waste management and the rat infestation on the surrounding wildlife, in particular on the local bird population, which includes protected species. The planning officer focuses only on details mentioned within objections for the previous planning application. It is also disturbing that the planning officer, while failing to mention a number of legitimate concerns, chose to highlight an objection of over-provision of food and drink outlets in Dunkeld from the previous application. Not only did he highlight it, but as before, he applied it to this planning application, discussed it in detail and attributed it to a number of the objectors. Not a single objection mentioned over-provision. This inclusion, alongside other omissions and inconsistencies, suggests to us that the planning officer has not properly read the current objections and has chosen to base his appraisal and recommendation for this planning application on objections from the previous application. I'm going to skip this bit and get to the next bit because of time. Finally, it is... Oh, sorry.
I've stopped the clock. We're here to listen to deputations about the use of buildings on land. We're not here to start talking about personal attacks on people and what's said. Could we keep it to planning matters, please? Okay. I'll have to interrupt you again. If we're going to talk about individuals, we're not talking about individuals. We're looking at a planning application. So whenever you gather yourself, and we could start again and talk about planning matters, please. Ms. Clayton, are you willing to take questions from members on planning matters?
Absolutely.
Bailey McLaren.
Thank you. Could you maybe just give me a little bit more detail about rat activity in that area? I mean, I'm guessing that also some of the parking close to a car park, there are other vehicles that park there, probably with food as well, but equally, could you give us more information on that? Thank you.
Certainly, thanks. So there are residents that live very close to the Craft Diner and have lived there for a long period of time who had never been aware of the presence of rats until the Craft Diner located at its current location. The Craft Diner also experienced a rat infestation at its previous location at the train station, which has now gone since the removal and relocation. Oh, so
Councillor Allen. Beg your pardon, Councillor Allen. It seems you're on the ball there. Councillor Waters.
Sorry, Vice Convener, my question's already been asked.
Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, thanks, Vice Convener. Sorry, my question has already been asked as well, so I'll withdraw my question. Sorry, I should have written it down.
Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Convener. Thank you for your deputation. You mentioned waste and rat. Come back to rats again. Site visit said that there was no sign of any litter at all, and it's also mentioned here that rat infestation is an environmental health situation. and there's been no complaints.
Thanks. Yes, I'm not aware whether people have complained or not. I certainly haven't complained to Environmental Health, but I believe there was one site visit that was undertaken, and I'm not quite sure. And certainly that was after the publication in the online planning portal of the photographs showing the condition of the site and the rat holes and all of the other associated images. So that visit took place after the publication of those photographs. So I'm not quite sure why the planning officer would base his decision about presence of rats or poor waste management on a visit that took place after such shocking photographs were available for the public to see. But I am aware that there are still ongoing issues, and there are photographs that were taken as recently as yesterday which show the condition still in place.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. We have begun to stray into what are not actually planning matters. I've let the rats be discussed. I think we should really move on to questions about the planning. The actual concern of rats is environmental health, not a planning consideration. So can we please ask questions on planning considerations? Thank you.
Councillor Allen.
I'm happy to be stopped. It's within your deputation, you mentioned poor waste management. Can you just elaborate on that for me, please?
Pardon, sorry. So around the back of the container, there are bin bags filled with mixed waste that is not being recycled. Some of them open, some of them closed. There are containers, used food containers with remains of presumably some coleslaw type material. There are empty jars or not quite empty jars that have liquid and that are, and these containers are stacked on top of one another. So it's obviously not been an overnight situation. There's several containers containing the same, however. There are other containers that have serious mold issues that could not have happened. Oh, sorry.
I think we're beginning to stray into environmental health. I think Councillor Allen was trying to get an understanding about this building on this land and how that pertains to waste management rather than environmental health issues. Does that kind of clarify? Okay.
So I think, sorry, one of the things I would like to raise then would be the concerns around the abuse that the trees are receiving or have received. Would that be appropriate? But that was from poor waste management. That is from being used as a disposal site for coffee pods. So there is a little regard shown for the environment. In fact, I'd go as far as to say none. Thank you.
Councillor James.
Thanks, Vice Convener. Chris, good deputation. Thank you. Trying not to go down the route again. Without the environmental issues that you're talking about, the actual what we're looking at is the siting of a facility. So with the facility as it stands at the moment, it's providing something for the town. But are you objecting to the position of the new one, which is slightly to the left, I suppose, of where the current one is, and would you agree that there should be a waste management plan in place? Thank you.
Thanks. Ian, is this on? Is that correct? Yes, so within our personal objection and within other objections, we raised issues around the container itself, or the proposed container, specifically the size of the proposed container, the associated decking, and what would be the contents of the container, presumably fridges, cooker, the weight of that, and the impact that that's likely to have on the trees and the surrounding land. It was a condition, it was one of the reasons for permitting the planning permission last time, that because of the size, the relatively small size of the container. So to see a much larger container, I mean, you can see in the image that you were shown there, the tiny green container and this extremely large new container, to be considering that is, I can't remember what I was going to say there. So yes, that's certainly one of our main concerns. The waste management doesn't come down to just the waste that isn't being disposed of properly, but it also comes down to the water waste. So previously there were no water tanks that were supposed to be installed for waste water, and the waste effluent is currently being just allowed to spread out onto the ground. So certainly, I would absolutely, most definitely expect that if this is to be given consideration and approval, that those conditions are firmly put in place. But again, added to the weight that is already going to be present in a new enormous container, you have the added weight of wastewater containers too. So again, it all just, yes, we objected in our own objection, and others did too. Hope that answers your question.
Ms. Claydon, there's no further questions, so you're free to go. Thank you for your deputation.
Thanks, everyone.
Going to call on Mr. Steed, Chair of the Highland Perthshire Cycling and supporter of the application. Morning, Mr. Steed. I'm sure you're aware of the process now. Whenever you're ready to start, I'll start the clock and I'll give you a prompt after 4 minutes, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you to the council officers for the report that was prepared. It was very comprehensive. I am the chairman and one of the trustees of Highland Perthshire Cycling. We are a registered Scottish charity, and we work to encourage and improve conditions for people of all ages and abilities to cycle throughout Perthshire. We have worked for many years with Perth and Kinross Council, with Perth and Kinross Countryside Trust, Visit Scotland and other organisations to establish routes and places for people to cycle. Why this is relevant to this planning application: we cater for people of all types, young, old, disabled. In particular, we've just launched 5 new disabled-friendly cycling routes. Cycling is growing as a recreation and a means of tourism, as is in particular e-bike, electric powered cycling, and tricycle and quad cycle cycling for people with different abilities. These cycles are not cheap. They are quite often expensive, and anyone travelling by bicycle, whether they are a UK national or a foreign national travelling through Scotland, are quite often carrying quite a lot of luggage. The reason why this matters is because we need to talk about the provision for people choosing to cycle either locally or as part of a nationwide tour through Scotland. And in Dunkeld, we have a very key destination. It is obviously a pinch point for routes north and south, and it is also a bit of a honeypot location based on the facilities, the rides that are available around there. In the recent work that's happened around the A9, there are many now completely traffic-free cycle paths, including one that was just installed over the Tay Bridge, which then facilitates local residents of the Perth area to cycle up to Dunkeld. This matters because when people get there, they generally want to eat something and have something to drink, somewhere to leave their bike. In the Craft Diner, we have a unique service for cyclists. The craft diner is open year round. Many of the facilities otherwise in Dunkeld are not year round, particularly the pub gardens, where many people do choose to stop with their bicycles to have them inside to purchase food or drink. The Dunkeld craft diner is there 24/7, well, not 24/7, all the days of the year in all weathers. Being able to have that proximity to your parked bicycle is very important to cyclists, and it is actually the #1 barrier to people cycling more and more often. It is also very important to recognise that people are quite often cycling, they get wet, they get muddy, particularly when they're mountain biking. That is not conducive to walking inside a cafe or a pub to sit down and enjoy a drink where you cannot see your potentially rather expensive bicycle covered in luggage. Therefore, the facility that the craft diner provides is that unique ability to not only order in advance and stand or sit next to where you're waiting for your food and then to consume it or then to carry on to another destination. There is nowhere else in Dunkeld that offers that facility to cyclists who are travelling through or to the location. Also, because it is off the main road, the craft diner means that there is no blocking of footpaths. The footpaths in Dunkeld, as many of you will know, are very narrow, and there is no provision really for anywhere to put bikes while people wait to order or consume food or beverages. So the reason why Highland Pasture Cycling is fully in support of this application is because it provides somewhere for people to sit under cover while they wait or consume their food within close proximity of their bicycles. They can also pre-order and collect that food without even getting off their bicycle. That'll be part of the provision for the new container, as I understand it. And also this expansion means that there will be more provision for people to turn up in larger groups and not have to wait for an extended period of time, because there will of course be more staff hired, there will be more chefs available to cater for larger groups. Therefore, in closing, Highland Pasture Cycling as a local charity is in full support of this application, because it will enable more people to travel more often and have a better experience visiting Dunkeld and travelling further on.
Thank you, Mr. Stee. Are you willing to take questions from members? We'll give a moment for the chat function to populate. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Sorry, it was Mr. Steed, I think. I didn't quite catch your name there. Just one quick question on that. So your support of this application is due to the fact it's an outdoors place where you can, without having to go into a venue, you're able to order on and stay outside and keep an eye on your bike. Is that your argument? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I've experienced this myself many times when I have travelled to, I live near to Dunkeld, and it's very often part of my own cycling as well as friends and family. And that ability to have the bicycle be outside, collect and then consume food is an absolutely key fact. And again, it's only available during summer months at 2 of the beer gardens in the pubs that are on the riverfront. There is limited parking there for bikes, and it is obviously a pub environment. It's quite expensive as well, and therefore it is definitely of high amenity to cyclists to have an alternative to the seasonal pub availability.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Steed, there appears to be no further questions. You're free to go.
Thank you.
Can I call on Mr. Sevic, please? Morning, Mr. Sevic. I'm sure you're fully aware of the procedures and you've been here before. So whenever you're feeling comfortable to start, I'll start the clock and I'll give you a wee reminder after 4 minutes.
I'm not going to take your time too much. This is a total taxpayers wasting money time for me. It is so wrong. What the objectors did was total manipulation of public opinion. Everything has been told here, 100% untrue. Any question you want to ask about the rats, planning, whatever, ask me. I will explain. Environment health officers inspect me 3 times unannounced. For the rat issue, we had an independent surveyor came. They inspected, they write a report, they find me not as a source. The rat's been there for maybe 1,000 years. I didn't create it. My business didn't create it. They were already there. We moved there knowing the risk that this was going to happen. We don't even know the waste issues. We don't do no waste food. We have the containers. They are all environmental friendly containers we use. They are all separate from every other bin. Back of my containers, totally closed box. What kind of rights they have? They go behind my home, take a picture and then publicly publish it. I have no other problem explaining to you. Whatever your question, ask me, I will answer it. I'm not going to take your time.
Members, if you have questions for Mr. Civic, please populate the chat function. And we have questions in. Councillor Braun.
Thanks for your deputation. Just to clarify, obviously waste is a question that's come up. My understanding is that the existing container will be removed and you'll get your electric hookup basically from where that was. The electric hookup will come from what was the old container. And my question really is, so that's to clarify that. But the second point is the waste, obviously litter goes in the bin, but any waste, presume it's collected. Could you just comment how you deal with, for example, wastewater? Where does that go? And presume you have a tank for water supply coming in. Could you just explain how this all works? Thank you.
End of the night, we have a 25-liter wastewater tank, which comes from the sink. There is no other waste, hand wash, and nothing else. We take it and we drop to the drain on the street, straight. There is straight goes to drain because there is nothing else. Just like a normal other household, other wastewater. We don't even know toilet, nothing else. It's literally washing your hands and washing a few items over there. And then the water never goes everywhere as I've been accused. The water doesn't get oversplashed as I've been accused. We are very much controlling. Yes, the water tank gonna get dirty. It's very normal. It's outside place, rain, storm, mud, everything happens. But I change the container, the wastewater container every 3 months. I always buy the brand new one. I already changed recently about a month ago. And this is how we take it. End of the night, we take the water, put on the drain on the street and be done with it. And it doesn't affect anybody's life. It doesn't affect the environment. It doesn't hurt the environment because it's like another household wastewater.
Yeah. So fresh water is on the similar basis. I presume you have a fresh water container where you drain from. Is that you fill that every day for your water coming in? And before you answer that, my other point is obviously people are eating there. You said they're disposable containers. What happens to those containers? That's litter, obviously.
The wastewater, my boxes are made from sugar cane. They are very, very expensive. I spend so much money on it. They go directly to the general bin. I take it to my home. I put it in my general bin. We got 2 bags Monday through Friday maximum because everybody takes the food away. They take their box away. We don't get so much boxes. And then once you press them, the whole bag, it becomes dead big. Because end of the night, we take all the bags down, I empty it, and I push all the boxes crash, and I take to my own bin. It's also environmental friendly, which is by law, if I know correctly, every takeaway, the premises in the country, they're supposed to be using environmental friendly box. This is what I've been told when I opened this business. That's why I'm spending so much money for the protect the environment by these expensive boxes, not hurt the environment. So end of the night, we crush them, take them to general bin. This is how we deal with it. But saying that, once the business get extended, it's not going to be possible. So we're going to apply for an extra bin through the council. So we're going to have a collection time. It's on the process anyway. Once all this goes through, we're going to have our own bin. It's going to be collected by the council.
Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Mr. Savic, a question I had is, I was on the committee in 2022 when you applied for the present facility that you have now, and there was no hint of any expansion then. I have a couple of kind of related questions. So your business has obviously been good enough for you to expand. Is this the final way you're going to expand, or will you expand further? Say, will we see you again in 2 or 3 years' time to have a full going restaurant or something else like that, or is this the final plan of what you're intending to do here? Thanks.
I can't confirm nor deny, but I mean another premises coming in Perth. We're going to apply for another application very soon for a Perth location. But on the current location, we cannot expand any bigger. That is what it is. This is going to be 30 foot by 12 foot for customer to walk in to collect their food. And it's going to be indoor kitchen, so I can be able to hire people. So then it's going to be easier to work with other employees. But this is going to be the final one because as a location, there is no other space to expand, and we don't need, because I don't want to open a restaurant with the current financial crisis going on in the world. You don't want to do that because there's so much overhead. The best way to make money, to me, in my opinion, as a 30-year chef, take away, choose the best product. We have a certification from Visit Scotland that I serve the Scottish produce only. My produce come directly from the farms. So that's the final one. I can only hope, but I cannot promise.
Oh, you can't. Oh, no, I understand business changes and work changes.
I mean, to be honest with you,
but
my business is going so well. I mean, so far since last summer, sorry, I serve 180 people a day. So average. If it's going to go well, why not?
No, that's all right. No need for further commentary. Thanks very much. To answer my question.
Bailey Williamson.
My question's been asked already.
Thank you. Bailey McLaren.
Thank you. I'm going back to the waste management concerns that have been raised by the community. And it's important that businesses operate well within communities with community cohesion. And so if you are granted planning permission and you have a larger unit, will this allow some of your waste to be stored inside that unit? And I have visited myself and witnessed bags outside the container. So I have seen it with my own eyes. So I just am wondering if that's going to give you more capacity to store stuff inside.
I mean, inside a container, you cannot hold the waste. It's going to be cross-contamination straightforward. But we're going to have enough deck so I can be able to put bigger the bin containers, like how they use in the general bin across the car park, which is where the exact source of where the rats coming from technically. So we're going to have a bigger boxes, like a bigger bin containers with the lock on them. And then I believe the council collects bin from Dunkeld every 48 hours or every 3 days. So it will be easier to collect them, and then they can come and collect my bin also, because we're going to be applied for it, because it's going to be unmanageable as an in-person. So we will keep them in the container. And then, to be honest with you, it doesn't matter how it looks. Around my container, there is no food waste, because we don't do like a restaurant type. There is no food on the ground. Every night or every time I have a chance, I get up, I get out of my container. If there is any fries on the ground or any crumbs, I pick up myself. Main problem your car park is your motorhomes. They put grey water on the ground. They left bin. Your council inspectors, they came and inspect the car park. We collect the bins together. I am not the source for any kind of waste. I'm not the source for any kind of rats. So all I'm saying is my waste is not the problem, because we clean them and we collect them promptly.
Mr. Sevic.
Convener, there was just, I asked a question, I got an answer, but then became a bit more of a slight attack there about council.
No, I think I found it will keep to be okay.
Mr. Sevic, there's no further questions. You're free to go. Convener, there's no further deputations on this application, so I'll hand back to yourself.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Can I ask members if they have any questions for officers? Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Convener. Been listening intently here, and would like to get a bit of clarification. I had a wee look at the environmental health report, which was all about noise and stuff like that. We've had a lot of concern here raised about, you know, the waste, the operating procedure of the applicant's business and that. And I would just like clarification from the planning perspective, exactly what sits within our remit that we should be looking at to determine this application. Are we supposed to be, is that the job of the planning authority to look at the waste management and the operating procedures of the business coming in, or is that something that should be done separately from the planning application process? And it does seem to be a wee bit confusing to me, and I would just like to have clarification on that to help us to determine the application before us. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Waters. Obviously, there are parallels with other regulatory services through environmental health and street traders licenses, etc., to take into consideration. But yes, the operational management of a facility is a consideration to take into account. You'll note from conditions 9 and 10 that there is details required to be submitted in respect of waste and recycling so that we know exactly where it is. Condition 12 also has the requirement for an operational management plan. Now, the wording of that doesn't necessarily expand quite so far as to make specific reference to the waste management aspects, but it could be expanded to incorporate that. But from our perspective, that would cover the planning requirements through development management, but there are the separate regulatory requirements through environmental health and separately licensing.
So again, just a wee quick supplementary. The environmental health given any recommendations on conditions to control that, given the is a little bit unique here, and that the van is from that perspective off grid.
Yes, environmental health being consulted and have fed in. Lynn's here and perhaps can give some clarity in relation to street trader licence issues, management of waste, grey water disposal, etc. Are all related to that process. I don't think this is particularly unusual either. These street trading vans are generally all off-grid, whether they be on a roadway in a parking area or in a wooded area off a car park like this. So it's not unusual or unique.
Lynn, do you want to come in? You're on mute, Lynn.
Sorry, I was just saying that, yeah, as a food operator, he has to conform to the food health and safety regulations with regards to ensuring that, the hygiene standard levels are kept, and that also includes looking at his disposal of waste, pest control, and grey water. And it is, for sites like that, it is, grey water can be put down the drain as long as it's just grey water and there's nothing else in it. And they can store their oil waste as well at the side of the container, as long as it's disposed of in the correct manner.
Actually, so can I just do a very quick, since Lynn's on, just confirmation regarding the current business, which has been operating for a while. Has there been any complaints or any issues raised within the current operation of the business and its current premises?
We had received complaints with regards to rats infestation in the area, and our pest control contractor for EH has went out to the site twice, and it was found that there was burrows on the Stanley Hill and in the areas around the bin. So the appropriate landowners, which is the National Trust Scotland and PKC, because of the car park and bin areas, have all been advised, and appropriate pest control mitigations are going to be put in place. At the time as well, it was noted by the pest controller that the area around the craft diner was reasonably clean and tidy, and there was no burrows around the actual unit itself. They were on Stanley Hill or at the bins areas.
That's
So,
thank you. Thanks, Lynn. Thanks, convener.
Yeah, Mr. Elliott wants to come in just a second.
Just to come back to your original question, Councillor Waters, I think there is an overlap here between planning and other regulatory regimes. But I think the way to think about it is planning is about the land use and the provision of the waste facilities. When it comes to enforcement, that's much more likely going to be the other regulatory regimes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, convener. In Mr. Sevic's deputation, he spoke about large and sealed containers. That in itself is good. However, my understanding is that these collections would need to be paid for. Is that correct? And if so, can we make that a condition? Thank you.
Yeah, certainly from the perspective of waste collection, obviously we've tried to summarise it within paragraph 62 of the report, and obviously I've cross-referenced to conditions 9 and 10 already in respect of the provision of waste and recycling facilities and the operation. It's commonplace, obviously, commercial refuse has to be dealt with that way. It can't be done by the council. Whether a condition would be appropriate to confirm it, I would probably go down the route of saying an informative would be more appropriate in this instance.
As someone who used to run a catering trailer, I can say that any rubbish produced by my van had to be taken away by not the council but by a contractor. So if that helps answer your question a bit. Vice Convener Stewart.
Thank you, convener. We're talking about a larger container here, or is it my reading right with regards to it's going to be a similar containers will be floating on top of pillar type screws into the ground?
Yeah, certainly, obviously, as we've heard today, the existing container was a much smaller facility than the one that's proposed at this time. Through condition 3, we have sought additional details in respect of the base of the container, the decked area, etc., so that we can assess the pressure on root protection areas, etc., of adjacent trees. We have had liaison with the council's tree officer, who's satisfied that that would be an appropriate way to progress, but we'd get those details and we would assess them accordingly.
Thank you for that. Any further questions? No further questions. Can I ask for a motion? No one's putting forward a motion. I will. Oh, Councillor James.
Sorry, I was having trouble with my keyboard, convener. Sorry. Yeah, a bit of a controversial one, this one, but we're here to look at planning, not environmental health or anything else for that matter. It's been in operation for the last couple of years. Environmental health do seem happy with it on the occasions they've been out. Therefore, I'm happy to go with what our officers have recommended. And I'm not sure, I was just looking, what I was actually doing just then, was looking at the conditions to see if there's one for a waste management plan. Because I'd like that a waste management plan to be included, because I think whilst Mr. Sevic's dealt with the wastewater issue up to now with an 8 metre container, I think a 32 container would may well produce a little more wastewater, which I'd like, and in fact waste in general. So I'd like something in place that enabled him to deal with it. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Councillor James. Councillor James, the one thing I can say is, as I've said previously, I did operate a catering trailer. Your waste management plan, now Lynn can correct me if I'm wrong, but your waste management plan falls under your street traders licence and your environmental health certificate. So Lynn, if you can maybe just correct me if I'm wrong or confirm that I'm right.
Yeah, the disposable of waste is under the food health and safety regs, and they have to dispose of it appropriately from a food operator point of view. But I do note there is an operational management plan, condition 12. I mean, it could be worded to be put in there because it's looking at the opening hours, details of delivery and timing. So you could put in that it has to cover the waste aspect in that as well from the operational side of things.
Paul, have you got anything?
Yeah, that was obviously something that I answered to Councillor Waters, that there would be that opportunity to expand the wording of it. You know, condition 9 as it stands does highlight that the details must include, in terms of the details of waste, include details of the collection provider. So it's partially covered through that, but for absolute security and certainty, yes, we could expand condition 12 to include details of waste management as well.
Thank you. Councillor Illingworth, you've been waiting there patiently. You wish to second?
Happy to second.
Convener, can I? Sorry,
yes,
convener.
of course. Yes.
Can I just add? Sorry, I too have actually operated something in a former life, like a food operation, and I totally get where you're coming from. Although licensing is a huge issue for street trading as such, in order that the trailer is licensed correctly, are we able to condition via the planning process that it shouldn't operate until it is licensed correctly? Thank you.
It's going to come in.
Unfortunately, no, Councillor James, you couldn't. That's one regime telling you should apply for another regime, so you couldn't do that. The most you could do is put in an informative saying you should be applying for the street trader's license. But I know Mr. Sevic's already aware of that. I've already spoken this morning to my colleague who deals with street trader's licenses, so Mr. Sevic is aware.
Thanks very much for that, Mr. Elliott. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask if there is an amendment? No amendment. Can I ask if committee have any comments on the report? No comments on the report. Okay, therefore planning permission is granted with a revised condition 12. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on then. And the next application is 523, which is the change of use, alterations and extension to Steading to form dwelling house and associated works land 35 metres southwest of Gourdie Hill Farmhouse Bank Foot. And to introduce the report is Mr. Williamson.
Thank you again, Convener. As you've rightly pointed out, the next application on the agenda today relates to a proposal in a semi-remote location southwest of Bank Foot, where planning permission is sought for the change of use, alterations and extension to a steading to form a dwelling house. In this instance, and as noted within paragraph 33, there is some history relating to how the farm has been the subject of transactions over the years and how 3 replacement buildings have been erected by the applicant at Glensocky, which are fit for modern farming practices. The land and buildings at Gourdie Hill were offered to Tully Belton Farm, who only purchased the land and had no interest in the buildings that remain on site. As stated in the opening paragraphs, the buildings on site comprise essentially 3 elements: the original stone-built steading, a brick extension, and a steel agricultural shed. The application has been referred to committee in receipt of the light of 6 objections. As outlined in paragraph 25, the concerns and the reps largely surrounded the buildings not being redundant, lack of infrastructure, detrimental visual impact and poor design, detrimental impact on residential amenity, traffic generation, and impacts on private water supplies and biodiversity, among several others. As outlined in the report and as part of the proposals, only the original stone-built steading would remain, with the extension and shed demolished as part of the proposals. It should be noted by members that the demolition of those aspects could occur at any time without the need for planning permission. The focus, therefore, is on the ability to reuse and convert the original element of the complex of buildings, which aligns with the policies of the development plan and its sustainability principles. While there is a clear debate over whether the larger shed is indeed redundant, given reference to intermittent usage over the last few years, as members shall see in due course, the original element of the buildings is in poor condition with the roof subject to partial collapse. As such, it is considered to be unusable and redundant for the purpose for which it was originally designed for, thereby meeting the policy tests. However, following a redesign of the proposals, the resultant extended structure would be considered to be an appropriate fit within the landscape and would have adequate separation with the immediate neighbour to the east at Gourdie Hill Farmhouse. Furthermore, with no technical constraints or objections, it is the recommendation to approve this application, subject to the settlement of developer contributions and to the 12 conditions listed within the report. I will now take members through a short presentation to detail the proposals further. Next slide, please. First, we have an aerial image showing the location of Gourdie Hill in this rural area, some 4.5 kilometres southwest of Bankfoot as the crow flies. Tullybelton Farm is located to the north, while Glensockie Farm is located just south of the bottom edge of the aerial extract. Next slide, please. We now see a closer aerial image showing the arrangement and layout at Gourdie Hill, with the existing buildings in the centre and the nearest neighbour immediately to the right of the large footprint of the shed. Next slide, please. We now see a location plan which shows the site in the context of the wider area and Bankfoot, together with its relationship to the neighbouring dwelling. Next slide, please. The next image is the proposed site plan, which also shows the extent of the applicant's ownership in this location, with the wider land having previously been sold to Tullybelton as previously disclosed. It also shows the red outline of the elements to be demolished and the new extensions, which would be no closer to the neighbour than the footprint of the original part of the buildings to be retained. Next slide, please. Members now see a plan showing the roads and access arrangements, with photographs at the top showing the associated visibility displays. Next slide, please. Next on screen is the landscape block plan, which shows how the site would ultimately be laid out and how planting of hedgerows, wildflowers and trees would help integrate the site into the local landscape and provide a buffer to the nearest residents to the east. Next slide, please. We now see the 4 elevations of the converted and extended building with accommodation over 2 levels, with the uppermost into the roof space. Next slide, please. Lastly, we now see some axonometric plans showing the visualizations of the proposed dwelling against the context of the existing structures, including the shed to be demolished. It should be noted that the new dwelling would have a roof ridge marginally higher than the shed which would be demolished. I will now take members through a series of photographs taken by the case officer last month. Next slide, please. On the left, we see the view from the south looking towards Gourdie Hill. The adjacent farmhouse is just visible at the right of the shed. On the right-hand side is the approach from the access point to the northwest. Next slide, please. These 2 images show the view from the south of the buildings. The brick extension on the left would be demolished along with the large shed. On the right is the view of the east elevation of the steading to be converted. Next slide, please. Next, the access track is shown on the left, while a closer view of the north elevation is shown on the right. Again, the adjacent farmhouse is visible to the left of the shed, while on the right, the section for retention and extension is shown. These final images show the relationship from the shed and the adjacent dwelling on the left, and then a final view from the north looking back at the farmhouse, with the shed to be demolished just visible through the trees. Next slide, please. Thank you, convener. That now concludes my presentation, and I'll leave members with the site plan for reference.
Thank you, Mr. Williamson. We have deputations on this item, so I will now hand over to the Vice Convener for the deputations procedures. Thank you.
Thank you, convener. We have 3 deputations on this application. Could I first call Mrs. Walker, objector to the application? Good morning, Mrs. Walker. I'm sure you're aware of the procedure. Whenever you're happy to do your deputation, I'll start the clock. Could I maybe ask you to turn the microphone down towards your mouth before you start? Thank you. Whenever you're ready.
Hey, good morning. I'm Sarah Walker, and myself and my husband have owned Castle Kinglands Farm for almost the last 30 years. Our primary objection is the disproportionate abstraction of water from a limited mains water supply, but we also have concerns about increased traffic volumes and the developer not adhering to the council's current development plans. There are a few properties in Little Glenshee that are on a mains water supply. Most are on local supplies, but we are one of the 6 properties, 2 of which are presently empty, that have such a connection. We are, however, on a branch of the water main that ends at Westerton Farm. That's only less than a mile further up the road, and interruptions to supply are not too unusual. Our concern centres on the fact that we are beyond this development and so are vulnerable to a reduction in service from any additional connections to a supply that seems unreliable already. In addition, our pressure can be variable and we can suffer from low pressure. The plans under consideration are for a 5 double-bedroom house, with every bedroom having ensuite provision and 5 parking spaces. Yet there is no provision for even a single garage, so it does not appear that this new construction is intended for long-term occupation, but has been optimised for Airbnb type short-term lets. It would not be unreasonable to deduce that these 5 parking spaces are each being taken by a couple, and in consequence, you have 5 couples staying in the house, all undertaking their ablutions in the morning at the same time, so there could be a distinct drop in pressure, which will affect us adversely. I note that there are actually only 10 adults using the rest of the water supply normally, so it would double the usage. We note that the plans put forward do not show the provision of a hot tub, but neither did the plans for Wood End when Mr. Hodges built that property and then used it for short-term lets. It was noticeable that pressure reduced at the end of the week as the hot tub was emptied and refilled in readiness for the next set of holidaymakers. It is this vulnerability that we wish to reduce by objecting to the development as proposed. A subsidiary objection is that the area is rural and land use is essentially for agriculture with some secondary forestry. The building in question has been in constant agricultural use of one sort and another for the entire time that we have lived there. The single track road up the glen can cope with current traffic levels, much of which is either from residents or related to agriculture. Such a development with a high turnover of vehicles, often being driven by those unfamiliar with such roads, is likely to lead to more accidents, such as the one just last week, when someone appears to have failed to take the bend safely and ended up going through the hedge immediately below the proposed development site. This is not the first time that such an accident has occurred at that bend. Finally, I have mentioned already the rural nature of the area and its prime use as productive agricultural land. This proposal fails to support that use and encourages the development of substantial properties far in excess of those needed by rural workers. Indeed, the proposal fails to meet any of the criteria set out in Policy 19 and Policy 8 of P&KC's Local Development Plan of 2019. In addition, the application does not appear to meet the criteria set out in P&KC's Supplementary Guidance Note, Housing in the Countryside, March 2020. I would request that the committee reject this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Walker. Are you willing to take questions from members? Members, if you've got any questions, please populate the chat function. Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Glasgow. Thank you for your deputation. You mentioned interruptions to water supply on the regular. Could you just elaborate what causes these interruptions?
Yeah, sorry, it's if there is an excess of water take, because the pipe is only coming from Dramard. It comes across the fields to the back of Gurdy Hill and then goes up the road to Westerton, which is less than a mile. There are only 6 houses from Gurdy Hill and ourselves that are taking off water. We do get low pressure. I don't know exactly why, but it does happen fairly frequently. Wouldn't like to guess how often, but you don't notice it after a while. Yeah, I'm not sure whether it's something at the pumping station or something else.
Just a quick supplementary on that. So the problem is the pressure. It's not breaking pipes, it's an actual pressure problem.
It is the actual pressure, although we did have a break in the pipe a few years ago, which actually took Scottish Water 5-6 days to find, because it was out in the fields between the pumping station and Gurdy Hill, and we had to have bottled water delivered in pallets for that time.
Bailey McLaren.
Thank you. Still on the water concern, officers have recommended a condition that they must feel that addresses the concerns that have been raised. And I'll ask that point when I'm allowed to ask officers, but have you read that condition? And if so, do you feel that is adequate?
Yes, I understand you can't make a condition, but as I say, it does affect the places further up the pipe if too much water is taken off and the pressure drops for whatever reason, particularly the farm at the end, which has livestock.
Mrs. Walker, there's no further questions. You're free to go. Can I call on Mr. Green, objector to the application? Good morning. I'm sure you know the procedure. You might have to turn that microphone up towards you a wee bit. Whenever you're ready to start, I'll start the clock.
Convener, members of the committee, having lived at Gurdy Hill Farmhouse for the last 24 years, we are most directly affected by this application. Our objections are principally against the level of compliance with LDP2 Policy 19 Housing in the Countryside and the subsequent impact of the proposal on our amenity. Both the design statement and report of handling state that the steading is a cluster of 3 buildings, the stone building, its brick extension and the modern steel structure. Whilst there are 3 elements to the steading, these are not separate buildings, but rather 3 construction phases of a single extended building. The phases are contiguous, with the internal layout of the steading allowing free access between them without going outside. Policy 19 would support the redevelopment of the traditional stone phase of the steading were it in isolation. However, in this case, conversion requires demolition of the non-traditional steel asbestos phase. This creates a policy conflict for committee to resolve. Policy 19 supports the reuse or repurposing of non-traditional farm buildings. It seems perverse to demolish the 80% comprised of the modern shed solely to permit conversion of the 20% comprised of the stone structure. It is also proposed that to create this single 180 square metre dwelling requires rezoning of over 5,000 square metres of agricultural land. The single dwelling house would, by the applicant's own figures, comprise less than 4% of the overall site. Given this and the likely costs of demolition, restoration and landscaping of the brownfield area, our concern remains that despite any restrictions in condition 3 of the report of handling, the applicant intends additional properties to be constructed on this site. This highlights that contrary to the spirit of Policy 19, the site is being viewed primarily as a property development rather than employment opportunity. This view is further reinforced by the following timeline. In 2020, we contacted the applicant to inquire whether the steading might be for sale, whilst given an undertaking not to redevelop the site. This was politely declined, as was his right. However, in 2022, the applicant submitted a pre-application to convert the stone steading. In 2023, the applicant then offered the steading to Tullybelton Estate, to whom he had also sold the rest of Goody Hill farm land. Tullybelton's note attached to the design statement addendum makes it clear that the steading was offered to them as a development opportunity, not for agriculture. The applicant's acknowledgement that the steading has been in continuous agricultural use demonstrates that the non-traditional phase and overall site have been and remain fit for a range of agricultural purposes. We know that there is interest within the local farming community to keep the site in agricultural use. However, no evidence of open marketing of the existing property for agricultural or alternative employment purposes has been provided, as required under Policy 19 Category 5. If, however, despite all this, the application is approved, we are convinced that the design as submitted will not be beneficial to the amenity of Goody Hill Farmhouse, but rather would significantly impact it. For some 200 years, the farmhouse has been sheltered from the west by various generations of steading buildings. Removal of most of the current steading would provide little benefit on light levels, as suggested, whilst permanently laying bare the farmhouse to westerly weather conditions in this exposed location. Further, the proposed increase in ridge height of the converted steading, along with the east-facing first floor windows, door and balcony, will, due to the angle between farmhouse and steading, directly overlook our garden area and southern elevation. Reduction of the number of dormers as requested by planning has not resolved this issue. This will impact the rural privacy we have enjoyed for the last 24 years. For context, whilst planning seemed content that 25 metres viewing distance is acceptable for privacy between properties, the nearest dwelling currently is some 750 metres away. We therefore seek a condition to restore our privacy by a suitable planting of tall, mature evergreen hedging. Finally, we thank you for your time today and invite you to reject this application, or at least a deferred decision until you have visited the site. We firmly believe that a visit by committee members to both sides of the boundary is necessary to place these issues in context.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Are you willing to take questions from members? Members, if you'd like to populate the chat function. Billy McLaren.
Thank you. I would like to ask you about the water. I'm presuming you too are on that private water supply, and have you experienced impacts of water supply or water shortage?
Yes, we have. We have had on occasion with the water has gone off. In fact, we've got almost a system running now where as soon as we notice a drop in the pressure, we will phone Westerton to warn them that they're about to run out completely. because they go first.
If it's a supplementary to your original question.
Do you have you considered harvesting rainwater to try and assist with this issue?
About its circumstances rather than the application.
Councillor Waters.
Sorry to just go back to the water one, but I've got a wee bit confused here. Is it a private water supply, or is it Scottish Water? Well, public? Is it a public supply of water?
It's a public supply. There is for some reason, there seems to have been an informative included that probably shouldn't be there, which talks about private water supplies. So we are on private drainage to a septic tank, but it is a Scottish Water supply.
Just a quick supplementary. Have you contacted Scottish Water then over the? Or I get you didn't focus as much on the water, but the previous person did. Have you contacted them about issues with the pressure? Which really is not relevant to you, I don't think, because it's a new application that it should be relevant to, but you can answer it if you want.
Yes, we have. Whenever the water goes off, one of us will contact Scottish Water. Most of the time, it's a fairly easy issue with the pumping station, but as I say, we have had significant leaks and prolonged delay of getting the water back on in the past.
Convener Massey.
Thank you. My question has just been asked. I should have put it in the chat.
Mr. Green, there appears to be no further questions. You're free to go. Can I call on Mr. Alberdi, agent to the application, and he's going to be accompanied by Mr. Hodge, the applicant. Mr. Alberdi, I'll start the clock whenever you're comfortable to start. So,
dear Governor, Vice Governor, and members of the Planning Committee, dear member of the public, good morning. I'm Jaime Alberdi, architect at GLM, Architects and Surveyors, the agent and designer of this project proposal. With me here is the applicant, Angus Hodge, the CEO of Hughes Hodge Limited and the owner of Gordie Hill Farmsteading. We are pleased to have the opportunity to present our proposal and respectfully request its approval from the committee. We have come here to be able to answer any questions that the committee might have. More than happy. Angus Hodge aims to develop the existing 19th century stone steading in Gordie Hill Plateau and turn it into a big family house with a big garden full of trees, similar to those of the neighbors on the other side of the fence. To achieve this, we need to demolish the largest steel cattle shed that is redundant, dangerous, and not visually appealing. Let me provide some background information. Hugh Hodge purchased the steel steading at the surrounding land in 2016, investing more than £12,000 in renovating the accesses within the building with the intention of renting it out. However, this has not been the case, and one has been paid for rent. No one has paid for the rent in the shed in the last 9 years. Even though some neighbors have used the space to keep their cattle some winters for free as a charitable gesture. There is no real commercial demand for it in the area. It has been a commercial failure. During this time, the roof renovation, likely containing asbestos, has become increasingly urgent. A quote for this work years ago was more than £30,000, and it will be even more today. Also, the ceiling height of the nave has not the height enough to have another operation. It can just contain cattle. It is also becoming a health and safety problem for the area because of the asbestos. In 2022, Burton, as they has said, acquired the land, but reject the idea of buying the shed itself. We have a letter that is included in the program. They don't want it. Nobody wants it. The steel shed has been now become a liability with no potential buyers. It is redundant and it has not amenity value as you have seen in the pictures. So on the other hand, side by side to this steel shed, making the 60s, the old building, 19th century, is not an extension, it's an addition. The Perth and Kinross, there's this farmsteading, stone farmsteading. The Perth and Kinross Heritage Trust value highly this historic fabric and wishes to preserve it, and it supports our proposal. This stone fabric has significance on its own, and it can be considered a valuable asset. This fabric has the chance to be transformed into a dwelling house by the Perth and Kinross policy. So, developing it into a dwelling presents a financial solution to the issue posed by the neglect steel shed, so that the stone fabric can be repaired and preserved and the steel shed can be demolished. Our proposal for the stone building aligns with the Council policy NPF4 and the 2000 Development Plan supplementary information, as the planner has said and stated. This will also benefit for the neighbors who will have not problems of noise and smell caused by the animals and trucks that has bothered them in the past. Also, by adding a new dwelling that complies with their policy, we aim to assist the council in achieving its housing targets. We would like to state that we are committed to meeting all the planner's proposal conditions for the development of the project. Thank you. That has met the reasonable objections of the neighbors in the past, to create an exceptional dwelling and enhance the amenity of Gordy Hill Mound. So, to achieve that goal, we have provided a high-quality design. The proposal respects the significance of the existing three walls of the building, of the steading, and the roof layout. For doing that, the building features a compact T-shaped design that you have seen, provide light and roof with these dormers that are a resemblance of old entrance. So we have provided an exhaustive ecological impact assessment to develop the landscape proposal. The proposal includes solar panels and other roof to offer more energy efficient solution. And we just want the same side of house like the neighbors that will demand the same amount of water and that will demand the same amount of parking space. There's plenty of time. We have the same size of plot land for the same size of building size. So I don't know why they don't want Mr. Hodge to have the same type of arrangement. So we believe that our proposal enhances the existing fabric and improves the amenity of the Gordy Hill Plateau. Thank you very much for your time and more willing to, looking forward to answer your question. Thank you.
Members, you heard that Mr. Alberdi is willing to take questions, so if you populate the chat function.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Thank you, Mr. Alberti. In your deputation there, you suggested that the steading was not commercially viable and that there had been no rental, no offers, what have you. Can you tell me, did the applicant receive an offer for the steading in 2022, as was suggested in a previous deputation? Thank you.
They receive an offer for the rest of the land. So because Mr. Hodge purchased the steading and a piece of land, and Burton just wanted the land, but not the shed and the surrounding land of the Gordy Hill Mound. So obviously it contains that mound, but the rest of land that was around, it was sold, but they never wanted the shed.
Yeah, I think you perhaps misunderstand me. The previous deputation was from Mr. Dean, I think it was, and he suggested that he had made an offer for the steading in 2022.
Sorry, I was not.
I don't think that there was an offer actually made. They made an inquiry sorry, they made an inquiry as if to ask if I wanted to sell, and at that particular time, we hadn't considered selling. No.
Councillor James.
Thanks, Vice Convener. A question, the issue of water pressure has cropped up in the two previous deputations. Are you aware of water pressure issues within the site you have, and have you done any investigative work, that's easy for me to say, investigative work to alleviate that problem, please?
We have, as we've said previously, a few years that I've offered it to next door neighbours who put some animals in there. We've never had any problems with having water for the cattle. And whether we're slightly further along the line and our water pressure is okay, we do suffer from interrupted supplies when there's a leak. But apart from that, no, we don't have a problem.
Gentlemen, there's no further questions. You're free to go. Convener, there's no further deputations, so I'll hand back to yourself.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Can I ask the committee if there are any questions for officers? And I will actually start this off. I noticed that the shed's made of asbestos, but I don't see any condition or informative about the asbestos. Is that when it's demolished? Is that something that falls under different legislation, or somebody just inform me of that?
Yes, that would be covered by other legislation, whether that be any concerns over health and safety would be subject to the Health and Safety Executive, and environmental health can also become involved if there are concerns in relation to that. But in terms of the demolition of the structure itself, that may well require a building warrant, and details on safe demolition would be required to be submitted in relation to that.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Allen.
I don't know how relevant this is. Thank you, Convener. In one of the deputations made earlier, it was suggested that it's unusual that a 5-bedroom house should not have a garage. Is that the case?
Thank you, Councillor Allen. It's very much upon the applicant to decide as to the facilities that they require to accompany their home. At this moment in time, there is no garage shown. If they were to come forward for a garage within the red line area in the future, we would assess that on the merits at that point in time.
Thank you. Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Convener. Just a quick question, Mr. Williamson, really. Paragraph 19 talks about Scottish Water, and it says sufficient capacity. It does say, however, a further investigation may be required once a formal application to connect is submitted. Should there be a condition in the offer saying that should be checked before any work is commenced, given the concerns raised by various people?
Yeah, certainly it's kind of twofold. Obviously, we have heard from Mr. Hodge today that there is an existing water supply that serves the property. Scottish Water have responded separately to advise that, you know, the connection is available. They need to establish contact with them. From the perspective of the issues with private water supplies, we have the associated condition. I think it was number 11, which requires the details to be submitted to ensure that there's no detriment that would arise to private water supplies in the vicinity. Obviously, it's quite a unique situation where we've heard today that it's a Scottish Water connection, but over private infrastructure in between. But from the perspective of development management, they will need to go through due separate regulatory process if they're, you know, increasing the demands on Scottish Water's infrastructure, yet also protecting private water supplies at the same time.
Thank you. Councillor James.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. And I guess Paul sort of partially answered what I was going to ask. Yeah, condition 11 is there, and there seems to be an issue around the pressure. Am I right in thinking, Paul, that I know through Strathspey Ward in general, the Water Board are upgrading the pipework? Does it include this area at all? Are you aware of? Thanks.
Councillor Jane, I think maybe a bit of sort of further information. I think it's become clear today that there was some uncertainty as to whether or not it was a private water supply or a public supply. It seems that it is a public supply. Scottish Water have been consulted and have no concerns in relation to providing a supply. If that supply is actually not in place already, it may well be that there's already a pipe that might have to be upgraded in relation to this location to provide for the new use. But in the second part of your question, I'm not aware of what Scottish Water's proposals are for any upgrading of any facilities in that much wider area. But as I say, Scottish Water have been consulted and have no concerns in relation to the connection proposed.
Thank you. Councillor Waters.
Thank you, convener. Just in relation to condition 5, within the conditions for reasons for recommendation, you kind of the previous one chats about the biodiversity. Within the condition for biodiversity, this is about the planting and landscaping scheme. One of the neighbours kind of mentioned the real concern and the need for that if we were minded to grant this, to have some kind of hedge barrier type thing within there. Within the reasoning of 5, it says in the interest of visual amenity. Is that enough to ensure that planting will be based around the amenity of the neighbours as well, and that approval, or can it be strengthened to ensure that it does?
Thank you, Councillor Waters. While I fully respect and understand the adjacent landowners' concerns in respect of having that buffer and the building essentially creating that at present, obviously the separation distances that we've highlighted within the report are considered to be quite significant. Obviously, we do want a proposal to have a good landscape fit on the site. Obviously, we have had an indication as to where landscaping would take place. Obviously, the adjacent neighbour made reference to supplementing the planting with evergreen planting, etc. That's not necessarily something we would advocate as good practice, because we don't think it's necessary, first and foremost, but also we would be looking for landscaping to comprise native species instead of utilising others which may not be, and which can also become a bit more of a burden going forward and cause more issues in respect of blocking out light, etc. to adjacent property. So as it stands, we are satisfied that condition 5 is satisfactory in terms of what it's requiring to achieve. It's not as a means to protect residential amenity, it's more about the visual qualities of the site more widely.
But it does actually say it's in the interest of visual amenity.
But not residential amenities. So I think what I understood from you was that you were looking to help protect the residential amenity. We don't think it's necessarily relative to that we would be seeking to have a landscaping condition imposed.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? No further questions. Can I ask for a motion? Councillor James.
Yeah, sorry, convener. It seems overly slow to hit the motion button today. I'm quite happy to go with the proposal as suggested by our officers, and I noticed the water is conditioned in 11, which I'm quite happy with, and think that fits everything. So I'm happy to go with the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Allen, you wish to second?
Yeah, given the condition on the water, yes, I'm happy to second. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask if there's an amendment? No amendment. Can I ask if the committee have any comment on the report? No comment on the report. Therefore, planning permission is granted in line with the Court of Handling. Or subject to payment of developer contributions. Thank you. Okay, we'll move swiftly on to the last application for today, which is 524, and it's for a residential development in principle at land 50 metres north of Fernack, Kirkmichael. And to introduce the report is Mr. Williamson.
Thank you again, convener. The last local application on the agenda relates to a proposal for a residential development on a site located within the settlement boundary of Kirkmichael. As noted within the report, the site has been the beneficiary of previous permission for residential development, although they were never implemented. The application has been referred to committee in light of the receipt of a total of 9 objections from a total of 7 households. As outlined in paragraph 25, the concern and the representations largely surrounded the proposals being contrary to development plan, being of an inappropriate density, impacts on visual and residential amenity, impacts on trees and biodiversity, and road safety concerns. As outlined in the report, the principle of residential development has previously been accepted on this site, albeit never implemented. And despite the concerns raised by objectors, it appears it may have been made that assumptions over the scale of development were in light of the most recent application from 2020, which was refused, which did show 5 dwellings. However, that application was refused due to a lack of information on a number of matters and the layout of one of the plots in particular. However, in this instance, merely the principle of residential development is sought, and the associated detail would follow either in an application for matters specified in conditions or full planning application. The focus, therefore, is upon the principle of developing this white land site within the settlement boundary of Kirkmichael. The use of the site for residential use is considered to be compatible with the adjacent land uses, subject to detailed layouts being provided in due course, and consideration being taken of technical matters such as roads, drainage, together with tree protection and biodiversity protection and enhancement. These aspects can all be adequately controlled by condition. With no objections from consultees, it's considered that there is a potential for a modest residential development on the site, which would take cognizance of the scale of adjacent development and residential and visual amenity considerations. The recommendation is one of approval, subject to the 10 conditions listed in the report, and I'd now like to take members through a short presentation to detail the proposals further. First, we have an aerial image showing the location of the site in relation to Kirkmichael, which itself has a relatively expansive settlement boundary into the rural environs. The site is located a short distance north of the junction of the B950 and A924. Next slide, please. We now see a location plan which shows the site's relationship with the Strathardo Lodge, formerly known as Dalchappie Hotel, to the north, and the nearest residential dwellings, Fearnach and Oakbank, to the south. Next slide, please. Next, we see a closer aerial image showing the site, which is a field located east of the A924 and River Ardle, within a defined woodland belt beyond. Next slide, please. The next image is the proposed site plan, which is very basic in terms of what it indicates. It also shows the indicative point of access centrally located. Members should note that there are no indicative layout plans or numbers associated with this application, and this submission merely seeks to establish the principle of residential development on this site. I will now show members a series of photographs taken by the case officer last month. This image shows a wider drone image of the site, circled in yellow, showing its location in the settlement between 2 clusters of existing buildings. Next slide, please. The next image is taken from the field to the west, looking back towards Strathardo Lodge on the left and Fearnach on the right. It also notes the backdrop of the woodland to the rear. Next slide, please. Next, Strathardo Lodge is shown on the left with its associated access and outbuildings, while on the right is the rear of the adjacent dwellings, whose rear elevation does overlook part of the site. Next slide, please. Next, we see a stitched panoramic image. It's shown from the east of the site at the edge of the woodland, looking back westwards towards the road, again showing the gap between the dwellings on the left and the lodge to the right. Next slide, please. Next, this shows the view from the roadside into the site, showing its relatively flat nature and landscape context. Next slide, please. This view is taken from Strathardo Lodge and its access looking back southwards over the site. Next slide, please. And these final images show the respective visibility displays near the indicative access, with the south on the left and the north on the right. Next slide, please. Thank you, convener. That now concludes my presentation, and I'll leave members with the site plan for reference.
Thank you, Mr. Williamson. Can I ask members if they have any questions for officers? Councillor Braun.
Yep, thanks, convener. Mr. Williamson, I may just ask about the transport comment. The comment on the transport reply was that they do not support this application in its current form. Is that not a reasonable objection from them?
I'll just ask Lachlan to come in on that point, and then I'll see if there's anything else I require to add.
Thanks. I think from the application that had been submitted, we can see from the plan that's on the screen, there hasn't been an awful lot of detail that has been included in the in-principle application. Yes, they've shown a point of entry, but it was felt through discussion with the case officer that a lot of the issues that we have raised could be ameliorated through a further application, in terms of we could have pedestrian access into the site to allow for school transport, in terms of we're probably looking for bus stops on either side of the road. The access could be suitably formed, and it also shows that a 43 metre visibility display could be provided along the front of the site. So a lot of the points that we had raised, the case officer actually felt that the detail that would come forward in a detailed application could actually be addressed. So that's why in terms of the initial comments that went public, yes, we did appear to have concerns about the application, but that was just primarily due to the lack of detail that had been provided.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Braun, you've got a second question.
I did. I thought I'd wait just in case anybody came in. Drainage on the site. When the previous application was refused, one of the concerns was drainage. I appreciate this is in principle, but there's been no sort of further comment on that. I just wonder, would that not have been investigated a bit more, given that that was one of the reasons it was refused?
Certainly in this instance, because it's not a detailed application and we are just looking at planning in principle, that specific detail would come through at the stage of the next application. And obviously as a private system, it will require to be to the technical standards of building standards and also SEPA as well. So as far as we're concerned at this moment in time, there's sufficient information to proceed.
Thank you for that. Councillor James.
Yeah, a bit of a daft one actually, Paul, as you'd expect from me. A notice on there, it just says for a small development. Was there any indication as to how small or how big this development is? Because it would, you know, depending on what they intended to put there, would, you know, you could have a different outcome.
First and foremost, I would say it's not a kind of daft question in the slightest. Obviously, an applicant is entitled to come forward just to establish the principle of a land use on the site. Obviously, as I've alluded already, the devil will be in the detail as to how many units come forward. Through obviously our placemaking supplementary guidance, we would be looking for a development pattern to at least follow suit and respect the local character, density, etc. So the applicant, whether it be the one at present or a future one, would need to take cognizance of that coming forward. So, you know, we will just have to assess the detail when we see it. But from the broader principle of a site located as white land within a settlement boundary, a residential use is satisfactory, subject to technical compliance with other matters.
Thank you for that. Any further questions? No further questions. Can I ask for a motion? I'll put forward a motion to grant. Quite happy with this to be in principle motion, in principle development. Bailey McLaren, you're going to second my motion?
Convener, I'm also happy to second your motion. As you say, it's an in principle, it's housing, it's rural housing. There's not much to dislike about that.
Thank you. Councillor Braun, you've put an amendment.
Yeah, convener. I'm a little bit cautious here because, and I'll come back to that if I may in a moment, but my concern here is that this is the entrance to the village of Kirk Michael. It is there's an aesthetic image here as you enter the village. I don't believe, obviously a development here will require a number of houses to be built on it. We don't know, of course, how many, but looking from the history of it, there have been up to 5. I feel that will be out of place as you enter the village where it is. And my thoughts here, as I say, I'm a little bit cautious, and I'll come back to in a moment, is that it doesn't comply with policy 1A. It's not any development here will not be conducive to the image of the village. I think it's a bit detrimental to the village. I also think that will carry into policy 1B, C and E. And I don't believe it meets any of the criteria of policy 17. There are also concerns been raised about the road into the village. It's quite narrow. There's no room there to instigate a pavement. So any pedestrian movement there is already has to be a caution. It is the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, but as we know, not everybody obeys the speed limit. So my concerns are there, and given the comments from transport, I think policy 60B as well. Now, I come back to my caution is, of course, this is an in principle application, and I appreciate that that's a different circumstance. But going back with the previous applications, that anything up to 5 houses there, I think there is a time now to consider this potentially as detrimental to the whole area. So that's the reasons for my concerns. As I say, I'm a little bit cautious on it because it's an in principle. But I'll take advice here from Mr. Elliott. But those are the policies I'm thinking about, assuming I've got a second. So take from there. That's something.
I think that's what's concerning me, is the fact that you're detailing things that we don't actually know, because this is in principle. There are no plans. There's nothing in front of us other than the in principle motion to grant permission to for a residential development. I'll let Mr. Elliott come in now.
Yes, I'd kind of share that concern, convener. Like, what I would say is it's not actually the entrance to the village. According to the local development plan, it's further down. The settlement boundary is further down from the site. You saw in the plans that the stills, there actually is a house to the south, and then the boundary, which I've got here, is actually even further south. So the other thing is that it's within the settlement boundary. It's white land, so generally considered to be residential and compatible uses are acceptable. You've also got a planning history where it's been deemed acceptable. So what you would have to show as to why this is now not acceptable in principle.
That is the reason my caution, Mr. Red. So if you feel that it's too soon, I'm happy to withdraw it, because, as I said, that was my caution. But I think looking at the history of it, the density is not going to be conducive to the area. But I appreciate that. So
the density would be for the AMFC.
That's right.
Yes, that's right.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And there's comments in the report about that. So yes, there was an issue before, but you would have to address the density in the AMSC application.
I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that. Then, if that's your advice, fine. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. In light of that, and I asked if there's any other amendment. No further amendment. Therefore, planning permission is granted in principle. Thank you. We now move on to the PANs. If we can get them up. Not sure if we're going to get them up. We're going to want to get time. So hoping they're going to be all 4 and I didn't have to read them. Okay, for the first one is a residential development allocated site H314 at land 90 metres east of Westfields of Rattery, Balmoral Road, Rattery. Can I ask if members have any comments on this? And the first comment is from Bailey McLaren.
Thank you, Convener. Yeah, I would just like to comment as could we have some consideration given to community availability of building space, community use for groups to meet in, which is part of building our stronger communities. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Braun.
Yes, thanks, Amina. There's been two public consultations held by the developer on this site. The most recent one was last week, I believe. And I've been to both of them. I give them their due. They've been communicative with the community and have taken on board various comments that were raised. But the three areas which I think always come back, if I may reiterate, is the junction with Hatton Road and Balmoral Road. With the volume of traffic, there's a concern there, and perhaps that should be looked at. The second matter is the access of pedestrians into Rattery itself. I think the developer has offered to install a pavement partial way. I just think that needs to be carefully looked at, because there's no pavement going from this part of Hatton Road into Rattery itself. And obviously the school is at the bottom of Hatton Road on Rattery High Street, and obviously these are going to be affordable houses, and therefore could have obviously children who would be walking down to school. And the third issue, which I think is concerned, listening to people speaking at the time, is the amount of parking spaces within the development. This is going to be totally affordable housing. I think there'll be various mixed tenure. But the issue has always been the number of parking spaces that were allocated. In the past, there's a belief sometimes that people in affordable housing only have one car or no car, and there's a feeling that there should be perhaps 2 car parking spaces per house. The developer themselves have mentioned there is further space within the land to possibly do that. So I think an advice perhaps to have a look at the number of parking spaces in the development. That's me. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comment on that one? No. Okay, move on. The second one is the change of use of holiday cottages to allow holiday use of residential use as staff accommodation for employees at Taymouth Castle Estate, Moness House Hotel and Country Club Aberfeldy. Do you have any comments on that one? Bailey Williamson.
Yeah, one of my comments would be about developer contributions and where we sit. I know it's a fine line between requiring them and not requiring them, because we are getting housing into the community, but I think it would be important we do get an officer position on that. I think secondly is about access to the site, not from the main entrance, but from the rear. I'm not sure whether it's the intention of the developer to actually open that access up to allow people easier access into Aberfeldy, or just use the main entrance. So it'd be good to get some clarity on that too.
Thank you. Any further comment? No. Okay, the next one is the erection of a poultry facility, manager's accommodation, staff welfare facility, office, storage buildings, security fencing, formation of vehicular access, SUDS, landscaping and associated works, land at New Biggin Farm, Kinclaven. Any comment? Bailey Williamson.
Clearly, the obvious one would be about the environmental impact of poultry manure and how it's going to be stored and disposed of, and comments from SEPA would be important as well within that. Okay.
Thank you. And final one for today is the installation of a 49.9 megawatt solar farm comprising ground-mounted solar arrays, inverters, substation, ancillary buildings, fencing, CCTV cameras, vehicle access tracks and associated works at West Pitnacree, Ailith, Blair Gowrie. And we have comment from Councillor James.
Sorry, convener. I noticed and I queried this with Mr. Smith. With pre-application notices, we're only given the capacity of these facilities, but my concern is the actual acreage or hectareage that it's actually covering, and is this use or is this a good use of what could possibly be housing land, and is it a good use of the land in Scotland where it's not, you're not going to get the benefit of it for 12 months of the year? So it's what benefits do we get rather than taking up valuable land?
Okay, thank you for that. And Bailey Williamson.
Yeah, I think Ian's just maybe mentioned what I was going to say was around about the community benefit. Is going to be a community benefit fund attached to this development or not?
Okay, thank you. Any further comment? No further comment. Well, that's us for today. So I'd like to thank everybody for their attendance and thank everyone online for watching. Thank you.